Hey students, today we're going to read The Cask of Amontillado. And The Cask of Amontillado, it's an older story and it has old language and it can be kind of hard for ninth graders to understand. So I'm going to kind of walk you through this one just to help your comprehension. There are parts of the story that really need some context. I'm not going to do your job for you of finding your literary devices and your signposts. I might help you with one or two at the beginning, but after that you're going to be on your own. So just because I'm helping you doesn't mean you can stop doing your job. The Cask of Amontillado. I love this story. I think you're going to love this story too. It was written by this man here, and his name is Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe is sometimes called the father of the short story. He was kind of the inventor of stories shorter than novels in America. And actually, short stories are a very American art form. Edgar Allan Poe followed them, and he did it right here in America. Edgar Allan Poe kind of has a bit of a dark soul. He had this theory that the mood of a story, the way it makes the reader feel, is the only thing that mattered. And so in all of his writing, all he does is try to create a mood in the reader. And inevitably, the mood that he tries to create is an eerie or a scary mood. He wrote horror. So we're going to read some horror today. And yeah, he didn't work hard on things like characterization or good plots. All of that he saw as secondary to creating an intense mood. Edgar Allan Poe, what can I tell you about him? He married his 15-year-old cousin, and he was quite obsessed with his 15-year-old cousin during his whole life. And he was much older than her. And she died, and he wrote about that a little bit. And he died under kind of mysterious circumstances. There's a lot of conspiracies about his death. He was found dead in a gutter, and he really was probably addicted to substances, opiates possibly, or alcohol possibly. There's theories. Nobody really knows what for sure. My son Harvey has a theory I'll have to listen to in a minute. And another theory is that there was some voter suppression going on at this time where he lived in Boston, I believe, and some people think that he was killed when he was trying to vote. So that's Edgar Allan Poe, and the story is The Cask of Amontillado. You need to be following along and doing your job. Here we go. I love this story. You guys are going to like it.
The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne as I best could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation.
Okay, so right at the beginning, we have two characters. They are Montresor, who's telling the story, and Fortunato. And Montresor and Fortunato go way back. And Montresor, the narrator, says, we're old friends. We're frenemies, though. Montresor hates his guts. He says that he has insulted him 1,000 times, and he doesn't give us any more detail than that. The first question students always have is, well, what did Fortunato do to Montresor? We don't know. It's probably just kind of 1,000 little backhanded insults that are sometimes just part of some relationships. So, yeah, we know now, Montresor, the narrator, is telling us, hey, I'm planning revenge. In fact, you should know the denotation, the dictionary definition of words in the story. And I want you to look up this word right here, immolation, and make sure you annotate that, because this word is going to give you a much deeper understanding of what's happening in the story.
He had a weak point, this Fortunato. Although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared, he prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skilful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening during the supreme madness of the carnival season, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts."
Okay, so we're starting to have first of all, some contrasts and contradictions. Right at the beginning of the story, Montresor tells us, "I hate Fortunato, and I'm going to get revenge on him." But now when he sees Fortunato, he says, "Oh, my friend, I'm so happy to see you." That's a contrast, because there's a difference between what we would expect Montresor to say when he meets somebody who he hates and what he actually says. So I want you to highlight this in green, because that's our contrast and contradictions color. And I want you to add a little annotation about why you think he might be saying, "Hey, my friend, I'm so happy to see you." And, gosh, there's a lot going on here. First of all, this story is taking place during what's called the Carnival. And the Carnival is something that happens in Paris and Italy during the summertime. And it's a type of celebration. I think you guys have probably seen something similar on the Hunchback of Notre Dame. If you've seen the Hunchback of Notre Dame, everybody goes out in the streets and parties for a few days. They all wear costumes. It's very important to note that they wear costumes. And Fortunato is wearing motley, which is basically a jester's costume. So we're kind of seeing Fortunato right away as a clown or a fool. And it's important to note that he has these bells on the ends of his hat here. And those bells, you're going to hear them. It's going to be some vivid imagery throughout the story here. All right, let's keep going here. You know what? I'm sorry. Montresor says to Fortunato, "I bought this cask of really fancy Amontillado. It's a type of wine." And he is trying to kind of appeal to Fortunato's ego by saying, "I think I might have been scammed because I got such a good price on this Amontillado that it must be fake. I should have come to ask you." And he wants Fortunato to say, "Oh, let's go see if you got scammed or if you just got a good deal."
"How?" said he. "Amontillado? Impossible. And in the middle of the carnival." "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "Amontillado? You are engaged. I'm on my way to Lucrezi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me Lucrezi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry. And yet, some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go." "Whither?" "To your vaults." "Oh, my friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement." "Lucrezi, I have no engagement." "Come, my friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre."
Okay, so Montresor says, "You know what? I don't need your help. I'll go get Lucrezi. Lucrezi can help me." He knows that Fortunato has kind of an ego, and he wants Fortunato to say, no, let's go down to your vaults and check out this Cask of Amontillado that you bought. And here's another contrast for you. Montresor says, "No, I couldn't possibly take you down into my vaults because I can tell that you're a little sick." I don't think that he's actually concerned about Fortunato's health, because he just told me that he's trying to get revenge on Fortunato, and he doesn't really like Fortunato. He wouldn't care if Fortunato had a little cough.
Cold as nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucrezi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk, and drawing a cloak closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my palazzo.
Okay, so now in the story, these two men are moving from the streets of the Carnival, and they're going back to the narrator Montresor's house. Back then, men like Fortunato and Montresor were from very wealthy families, and they would have had a lot of servants. So Montresor makes a note, hey, my servants aren't at home. They're all out partying for the carnival. And that's a significant detail. These families used to live in these big, very rich mansion houses, palazzos, and they used to live there for generations. And when the previous generations of their family would die, they would bury them in the catacombs. Each family had their own little tunnel in the catacombs, and the entrance was underneath the family's home, the family palazzo. So Montresor is going to take Fortunato down into his family's vault, his family's catacomb. All the catacombs are connected. Each family has their own little vault, and then all the vaults are connected underneath the streets of Rome and Paris and various cities in Europe. And the vaults would also have been a good place to store wine because they're damp and dark, and they have a high humidity down there. So Fortunato believes that he's going down to the catacomb because that's where families would store wine and also where they store their dead.
There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled. "The pipe," he said. "It is farther on," said I. "But observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls." How long have you had that cough? My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. "It is nothing," he said at last. "Come," I said with decision. "We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucrezi." "Enough! The cough is mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough." True, I replied, "but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps." Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mould. "Drink," I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. "I drink," he said, "to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life." He again took my arm, and we proceeded. "These vaults are extensive." "The Montresors," I replied, "were a great and numerous family. I forget your coat of arms. A huge human foot d'or in a field Asian."
Okay, so I want to talk about what just happened. Montresor and Fortunato are walking through the vaults, and Fortunato observes, "Hey, your family has quite the impressive catacomb here. You must be very rich." And Montresor says, "Oh yes, we're a very distinguished family." Back then, distinguished families like the Montresors and the Fortunatos had what they called coats of arms, and they were basically little family logos. And they were, yeah, they'd use them to advertise their family's greatness. So Fortunato says, tell me again what your family's coat of arms looks like again. And this might be kind of one of those insults, like, oh, your house is bigger than I thought it would be. Oh, I don't remember what your family's coat of arms is. It's not that impressive. What is it again? And Montresor describes his family's coat of arms. And he describes a huge human foot in a blue field, and the human foot is stepping on a snake. And the snake, in return, is biting the human foot. And there's a lot of symbolism in this coat of arms. I bet you can interpret the symbolism yourself. In fact, I want you to make this annotation interpreting the symbolism here. And each family coat of arms had kind of a saying with it. And the Montresor's family saying is Nemo mi impune lasiesit, which means no man shall punish me with impunity. Nobody hurts me and gets away with it. There's a lot of foreshadowing and symbolism in this family coat of arms. So make a note of it, please, and we'll go on.
The foot crushes a serpent rampant, whose fangs are embedded in the heel. And the motto, Nemo me impune lacessit. Nobody wrongs me with impunity. Good, he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. We had passed through long walls of piled skeletons, with casks and puncheons intermingling, into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. Let us go on. But first, another draught of the Medoc. I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one. You do not comprehend? Not I. Then you are not of the Brotherhood. How? You are not of the Masons? Oh, yes, yes, I said, yes, yes. You? Impossible. A Mason? A Mason, I replied. A sign. It is this, I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my cloak a trowel. You jest, he exclaimed, recoiling a few.
Okay, this is really interesting what just happened. So Fortunato is drunk. Montresor is purposely getting him a little bit drunk. He keeps giving him medic or de grassa, different types of alcohol. He says, oh, here, drink this for your cough. It will help your cough. And so Fortunato takes a swig of one, and then he makes a grotesque gesture. And we know, yeah, you know what? We'll come back to that. No, actually, he makes a grotesque gesture, and you're about to find out how I know what this gesture is. The gesture is this. He makes a slashing sign across his throat. And Montresor, the narrator, he's confused. He's like, why are you making that slashing over your throat? And Fortunato says, oh, you don't understand my gesture. And Montresor is like, no, I don't understand. And Fortunato says, well, that's because you're not of the Brotherhood. And Fortunato is a little bit confused. I mean, Montresor, the narrator, is confused. And he says, you're not a Mason. And then Montresor realizes, oh, I know what he means. He means I'm not a Freemason. He's not of the Brotherhood. So there's two different types of Masons. There's, first of all, a bricklayer. I'm trying to get to, dang it, the type of Mason who lays bricks like this. And They take a layer of brick, and then they put a layer of concrete, and then they smooth that layer of concrete with something called a trowel, one of these. And then they put another brick. But there's also a type of mason that's a secret brotherhood, a society. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories about the Freemasons. They're kind of like the Illuminati, supposedly. And they're a real society. What's debatable is how much power and influence they really have. And so when Fortunato says, oh, you're not of the brotherhood, and he says, oh, no, I am of the brotherhood, actually, I am. And he says, no, that's impossible. It's one of those kind of insults that Fortunato kind of always gives to Montresor. He's saying, you're not actually rich and powerful enough to be a Mason. And Montresor says, no, I really am a Mason. And then Fortunato says, if you're a Mason, then give me a sign, because Freemasons have secret handshakes and signs that they use to identify other Freemasons. And Montresor does something very interesting. When Fortunato asks for a sign that he's really one of these secret brothers, Freemasons, Montresor pulls out a trowel out of his coat, which he's saying, oh, yes, I'm a Mason. Here's my sign. I have a trowel. And Fortunato doesn't get the pun on words, and so he laughs and kind of insults Montresor again. You're just joking around. You couldn't possibly be a Freemason. Let's keep going and taste your wine.
Few paces. Let us proceed to the Amontillado. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another crypt, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a recess in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no special use, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by solid granite.
Okay, so Fortunato and Montresor, they come to the end of the Montresor family catacombs, and they come to a circular room. And at the back of this circular room are 2 columns, and inside of those columns are basically a little closet that's just about 6 feet high, and how deep did he say? 2 feet deep, very small. But it's dark enough inside the catacombs that you can't see the back wall of this closet, if you will. And the men, this is such great imagery. The men are just lighting their way through these damp catacombs with 2 dark flambeaux, 2 dark torches, I guess. So yeah, great imagery. A circular room surrounded on all sides by the deceased, the dead, and just eerie lighting from 2 torches.
Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered.
So Montresor says, oh, go ahead down this little... He sends him into the closet because Fortunato thinks that it's a continuation of the tunnel. And so Fortunato steps in to the closet.
A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend. "True," I replied. "The Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones. Throwing them aside, I uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar.
So when Fortunato steps back into the closet thinking that it's a hallway, Montresor shoves him up against the wall and chains him to the wall. And Fortunato's confused. He's drunk. He doesn't really know what's going on. He says, wait, we're going to go taste some Amontillado. And Montresor says, oh, yeah, Amontillado, sure. And then he goes and finds some stones, some bricks underneath a pile of bones. And he is going to start bricking up that closet where Fortunato is chained.
With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low, moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. I reapproached the wall. The clamourer grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, "A very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo. Over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo? The Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, I said, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato!" No answer. I called again, "Fortunato!" No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected an old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace requiescat.
Okay, so that's the Cask of Amontillado. He, chains Fortunato to the wall. Then he puts a brick wall in front of him. so that it just looks like a round circular room without a closet anymore. And then he puts the bones in front of the brick wall so that it doesn't look like a new brick wall. And he says, nobody discovered my secret. It's been 50 years in pace requiescat. Rest in peace, he says. Yeah, I want you to make sure that you've highlighted several contrasts and contradictions because there are many of them. The setting, what else have we got today? Setting, mood, and alliteration. Any other notes you've got, and get it turned in. Have a great day, guys.